I'm going to work to get him elected, and I'm working with the campaign. We're working on policy issues together. I've been asked to go onto the transition team, and to help pick the people who will be running the government, and I'm looking forward to that. And I'm going to fight. I don't know what would happen to me if we lose.
This is Inside the Right. Tim, that was RFK Jr. speaking with Tucker Carlson about how he's been asked to be on Donald Trump's transition team. He'll also join Tulsi Gabbard, who is also reportedly asked to join Donald Trump's transition team. What do you make of this? Because notably, both of these people were, at least until recently, Democrats. So do you think that this is some strategic win for the Trump campaign?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about how the 200 Republican staffers that were endorsing Kamala. I guess that this is who Trump gets. RFK Jr. with his dead bear in the back of his car, and Tulsi Gabbard. So, okay, I guess you could consider that a win. I think the more interesting thing is what it says about the trajectory of the Republican Party. Because Tulsi and RFK really only... Well, Tulsi's kind of a wolf in sheep's clothing, and who the hell knows what her real ideology is. But like the main issues that both of them care about that overlap with Trump are issues that aren't like traditional Republican issues in the Reagan Republican mindset, right? It's the like isolationism, basically, like not getting involved in wars, isolationism, being hostile to the military industrial complex, that sort of thing, that sort of stuff that came out of the left. RFK is anti-vaccine. And they both have been kind of like anti-mandate on this front, anti-science in a lot of ways. And then they're both like obsessed with Nazis being able to post on social media without being censored or whatever. Anyway, so like literally RFK said that those were his three main issues: censorship, vaccination, and Ukraine. So none of those are like traditional, again, like Reagan, Bush, Republican values or views, but they do align with this sort of MAGA right, this anti-establishment MAGA right that Trump has brought in. And so I think that that's noteworthy, and like what types of people will serve in a Trump administration, God forbid, if he were to win. And then I do think it's also possible that there's some backlash here, that this can be used to talk to these voters we talk about on the show, like these Haley voters, because they are not in line with that. Right? Like your average Nikki Haley primary voter is like vaccinates their kids and thinks we should support Ukraine, and like doesn't really care that much about like what white genocide 420 on Twitter, like whether they get shadow banned or not. Like that, like those aren't like key issues for the Nikki Haley voter set. So I think in some ways, it might help them with kind of these younger guys that they've been already doing better with, this sort of younger bro crowd. But I think it could cause a backlash with some other more traditional conservatives.
Well, with RFK Jr. in particular, I mean, his polling was initially at 18-20%. It's obviously, filtered all the way down to about 3%. Is there any concern for you or your colleagues over at the Bulwark in terms of the impact that RFK would have, having given his support, his endorsement to Trump?
Yeah, I think on the margin, the best case scenario would have been for RFK to stay in the race himself and only get the 3%, because I think that once he got down to 3%, those people are pretty Trumpy. And so I don't think that all 3 of those percent are going to go to Trump. Like some percentage of those are just people that are like, I hate the parties and I hate the two-party system. They're contrarians. They probably won't vote for anybody, or maybe now they'll vote for Cornel West or something, or write somebody in. And then I think there are still a handful of those voters that are gettable for Kamala. Kamala had already scooped up, like a big part of her movement in the polls has been she got a lot of people that were traditionally Democrats that were just checking the RFK box because they were unhappy about Biden's age or Gaza or inflation or whatever. Like, and then Kamala came in and got all this momentum, and she got, and that is part of the reason why he went down so low to 3. So I think that she already kind of got most of those gettable RFK voters. So I think that there's a small concern. I think it could offset her bump a little bit coming out of the convention that Trump picks up, even if it's just 1%, it could raise his ceiling a little bit from like 47% to 47-48%, maybe 48's maybe a stretch, 47.5%, right? And so that's mildly concerning.
Is there any thought that adding or associating himself with RFK Jr. or Tulsi can actually be detrimental to
Yeah.
this campaign?
Yeah, I think both, right? And I think that both can be true, right? And I think on the one hand, Trump picks up some handful of cranks, right, into the coalition that maybe would have ended up with him anyway. Who knows?
Yeah.
On the other hand, just as like a framing and messaging standpoint, going back to the weird stuff that we've been talking about. If you look at there's a new poll out from Echelon this week that just talks about like, do you think the candidate's normal? Do you think it's trustworthy? I mean, Kamala's winning on that by big margins, right?
Oh,
And
you
so
don't
now
think
it's
adding the you don't think associating himself with the guy who took the bear carcass into his into his truck is going to help in that front?
I don't think so, right? And so again, if you just have like the Star Wars bar situation here, where it's like Trump and
Yeah.
JD Vance who like can't engage with the donut shop owner at a normal
Yeah.
level, and like you've got RFK and his brainworm, and then you've got Tulsi who gives off very bad energy for me, and I get Matt Gaetz and Tulsi are supposedly helping with debate prep. It's a motley crew, bro. It's like a motley crew they got over there, and I do think that just like paint it all together, it can help create a little bit of a nudge for people that's just like, do we really want to go back to this? Like, do we really want this in our lives for 4 years? Obama used the leaf blower analogy. It plays into the leaf blower a little bit. That I'm like, we're gonna have these fucking people in our lives for 4 years. Like, do we have to? So I do think I do think that it could be detrimental just to kind of the vibe of the campaign.
There has been sprinklings of indications, I guess we can say, that Donald Trump is at least humoring this idea that RFK would be a cool ticket, Like he's been reposting stuff on Truth Social that's like, this is the ticket, and it's Trump and RFK. Do you think there's any concern about JD Vance being replaced by RFK Jr. on the actual ticket?
I don't think there's concern it's actually going to happen. I think if I was JD, I'd be wondering if Donald has some
Buyer's remorse?
Some buyer's remorse.
Yeah.
I think he might. Trump kind of wanted Kennedy, I think, at some level, right? Like he liked the idea of like Trump Kennedy. Trump is very shallow like this, right? Like
Totally.
having that on the placard is something that he likes. Again, JD's so fucking uncomfortable. Like who would want to have dinner with JD? Like, say what you want about Trump, but like he likes to be around people that are enjoyable. And so I think that there's a little bit of regret there. I don't think there's actually going to be a change, but again, I think if you go back to these Haley voters, I think to message to them about like who is going to be in charge of this next administration. Like really, like you want these vaccine conspiracy freaks? I mean, RFK was posting about chemtrails this week. Like it's not like from 2011 he had a chemtrails post. He did a chemtrails post in August of 2024.
On Tuesday.
It's weird shit.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, let's finish off with this. Can you talk about the common thread between all of these people, whether it's Trump, RFK Jr., or Tulsi Gabbard, is that they all seem vehemently anti-Ukraine and pro-Putin. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I can. It's outrageous and it's telling. I think it's really telling. And I gotta say, like, we've been talking about these Haley voters, and I think it's a key message to them and to those endorsers that to win over. It's like, look, the pro-Putin side of this, they see this choice very clearly, right? Like the most Russia-friendly people in our politics, Tulsi, David Sachs over at the All In podcast, Trump, all of them are with Trump, and like they're not hedging, they're not. They know whose side Trump is on, and it's Putin's side of that battle. And so a lot of the particularly Democrats who are Ukraine allies and national security hawks on the Democratic side also see this clearly. But there's a fair number of these Republican hawks who are pro-Ukraine, but like kind of are rationalizing that, oh, well, maybe Trump will have some pro-Ukraine, maybe he'll change his mind, and Kamala might be too liberal, like all this bullshit, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that putting Tulsi in that camp is just more evidence when you're speaking to the Haley voters. It's like, no, if it is important to you that we protect the free world, we protect our allies in Europe from a monster that has invaded them and kidnapped their children, there's only one ticket here, and it's Harris Walz. And they are clearly on the side of Ukraine, as Kamala showed during her convention speech. And Tulsi endorsing Trump shows that the Trump Vance ticket is clearly on the other side.
Well, perfectly put. We'll leave it there. We will keep an eye out for any more of the RFK Jr. types, bear killing types, roadkill in car types that Donald Trump wants to add to his transition team. With that said, for those watching right now, to support the work that Tim and his team are doing, which is especially important right now as it gives a permission structure for those independents and Republicans out there to know that you don't have to vote for Donald Trump to support their work, please make sure to subscribe to The Bulwark. I'll put the link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
I'm Tim Miller.
This is Inside the Right.